The only truth that we have is silence. And I think that this approach to our practice of Usui Reiki Ryoho has the ability to profoundly change the way that we sit, the way that we practice. And it helps us to unlock a deeper connection with the original journey of Usui Reiki Ryoho as it's highlighted in its, or as it's suggested, I should say, or whispered at via the many different intricacies and nuances within the practice. And in this video, I want to explore those. I think that this video has the ability to really allow us to go so much deeper into the practice. So I hope you enjoy. Here we are, this idea that silence is the only truth that there can be. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that even if we can't get to it, even if we find that it's too difficult, I don't even know how that could look, we need to keep our trajectory in movement towards a silent mind. And that doesn't mean a mind that is just placid and completely shut off from any thought or any awareness or anything like that. Ideally, that would be the case, but it's pretty difficult. I think that might be impossible. It's rather that we should keep our trajectory in that direction so that when our mind gets busy, we can come back to silence. And so why is this such a profound discussion in the practice of Reiki? Well, because Reiki, simply put, is not a healing modality. Reiki is not something that you can beam into other people or that you can utilize to open up the energetic bodies of others. It's not something that I have the power to remove the suffering of other people. It's not something that allows us to channel deities and connect to other life forms and other dimensional beings and stuff like that. None of that is what Reiki is, because of this one caveat, that in silence we find the truth. So let me rewind here just a second and explain, why is this the approach to Usui Reiki Ryoho? Why is that the thing that we should be focusing? Not healing, not scanning for the Bosan, not Usui's journey, not your lineage, none of those things. We should just keep our trajectory towards a quiet mind. Well, in Reiki, there's a term called onsen ritsume. And this is the idea that we are cultivating a peaceful life with every step that we take. And peace means that we are not suffering, or that we are working as hard as we can to decrease our suffering, to be placid. I love this quote from my teacher, from Inamoto Sensei, and his quote is to walk placidly through praise or blame. And I think that's a beautiful way to put it. If we can be placid in the face of praise and blame, if we can walk a life of onsen ritsume, then that means that we are working our best to not be affected by any outcomes in life. And that is true peace. And that's why I'm saying that this truth is silence. The only real truth that there is silence in the mind. So let's unpack that a little bit more and dive into some of the topics that I was, kind of saying, like Reiki's not a healing modality, it's not an ability to channel things and so on. And why is that the case? Because we have to recognize that Reiki is universal energy. And we further have to recognize that we are connected to all things. So I am a manifestation of everything in the universe, just like you are. There is no separation between anything at all, right? The trees behind me, the air around me is all an expression of me, and I am an expression of it. We are moving together in the pulsation of the energy of all things, or the energy of the universe. So as soon as I start to view a practice as something that I could give the tree, for instance, or as soon as I view the practice as something that I'm going to utilize for channeling messages and read Akashic records or whatever that might be, these things are not bad, they're not wrong, but they're just for you. They're only messages for you. And here's why this is what I think. Now, I could be wrong on this, but if we use this kind of ultimate leveler as mental silence is the only truth that there is, and the freedom that that unlocks, then this is why I'm kind of bringing up this idea. You see, if something happens to me in my Reiki practice, which it does all the time, I hear things, I see things, I channel things, whatever, it doesn't make any difference what it might be. That is simply an expression of the energy of the universe moving through me. And so I have to recognize that I can't affect change on anything in the external world, because as soon as that is my belief, then I'm back to the realm of suffering. I'm back into the realm of furthering the duality that we live in. So if I channel a message and then I believe that I should be sharing that to other people, or like you can see on YouTube, there's so many Reiki videos of people like pulling things out of the screen and doing all this type of stuff. You know, the problem here is the belief. This is all framed within belief. And it goes against this understanding that you are the universe. You are the expression of all things. So there's nothing that I can channel that's going to help you, because you have to recognize that in yourself. So if we keep this journey towards mental stillness, and if we keep this idea as that being the truth, then we might see it like this. And I think this is a really beautiful way. I'll do my best to explain it, because it's a difficult metaphor to kind of explain verbally. But I hope it works. I'll do my best. The way I was trying to think about it was, imagine that you're seated in your practice. You're just seated peacefully. Your mind is quiet. You know, your body is quiet. You're just existing. You're just at peace, stillness, truth, right? You're just there. Okay. So in that space, imagine that you have like this, how do I want to say this? Imagine that you have a film reel, like a movie screen that is making up all of this type of stuff would be the movie screen that I'm talking about. Okay. And when I'm seated in peace, my eyes are closed and I'm just seated in my practice, then what happens to all of this? All of that goes away. But we're still moving with the energy of the universe, right? We're still moving from moment to moment. We're still progressing on our timeline, if you want to call it like that. But because I'm working to not be attached, then it's almost as if this film or this movie of this external world that is cycling through me, it's as if that just becomes blank. It just becomes neutral. If we lose the awareness of our external world, then all of the things that we attach to that awareness are also lost. All of our belief, all of our suffering, all of our attachments to those stories, those are also lost. So instead of having this, movie screen that's scrolling through us, showing us this external world that is one of our stories, one of our beliefs, our memories, one that goes against the precepts of Reiki, if we can work to cultivate this idea of mental silence, then all of those things go opaque. They soften, and they become more neutral. So it's as if we have this story running through us that just becomes us, right? It just becomes the neutrality of us. And I think that's what Onsen Ritsume is suggesting. I think that's what Inamoto is talking about when it's to move placidly through praise or blame. If we can move like this, then everything else is at peace, right? Everything else finds an ability to rest, because everything is an attachment of our mind. So this is another aspect of this understanding that we simply can't avoid. Everything that you believe about your practice of Reiki is an aspect of your mind. And every aspect of our mind is the impetus for our suffering. It's the impetus for our attachments. And so if we are channeling something, if we're reading Akashic records with Reiki and all these types of things, then we're attaching in the mind. What if we just recognize that even if these messages are, I've seen a lot of these things right now as I'm recording this, the US election is coming up in 5 days or thereabouts. So I've seen so many like Reiki videos about finding peace and doing all this type of stuff and like, turning inward. And I think that's what we need to do, because if you're at peace, then the external world, even if it doesn't seem at peace, that's irrelevant, because you're the one that matters. Your mind and your body are the one thing that matters. The internal peace that you cultivate is the only thing that there is. It's the only truth that there is. So, if we are working towards this idea of internal peace, then even if this cycle through us, this awareness of the screen or this video, however you would like to call it, as that moves through us, we are placid. We are at peace. And, one of the things that I was thinking about is, and I know one of the discussions on this might be, well, if you're at peace, then you're simply able to see the universe. So imagine instead of that screen or that movie moving through you, you are seeing rather the universe, like the galaxies and all these types of things. But that's still a function of your mind, okay? Even the election that's coming up is still a function of your mind. It doesn't mean that these things are not happening. It means the real question should be, how peaceful are you in your internal state? And, the Reiki world and the practice of Reiki, and by that, I'm always referring to Usui Reiki Ryoho, even though there's so many new iterations of Reiki, which, may or may not be Reiki, but as they move further away from the practice of Reiki, it's harder and harder to call it Reiki, because it's all framed in attachment. It's all framed in belief. And so instead of being placid with that movement or that cycling through of your experience, we keep adding layers of belief. We keep adding layers of attachment to what your teacher says. We keep adding layers of belief in what your teacher says, as if they must be the most, their way must be correct, or their way must be the right way to do it. Learning from a good teacher is beautiful. Seeking out a teacher who cultivates neutrality in you is liberation. If we look for a training within Reiki that is furthering the belief in the mind, that's furthering attachments, then you're only furthering your own suffering. We all want to walk in Onsen Ritsume. We all want to recognize the precepts in action. We want to recognize the full name of Usui Reiki Ryoho, which is Shin Shin Kaizen Usui Reiki Ryoho, which means the continuous improvement method of the mind and then the body. See, all of these aspects of Reiki have nothing to do whatsoever with the external world. They have nothing to do with healing, nothing to do with channeling, nothing to do with opening other people's chakras or doing any of these things. It's all about cultivating your own internal peace, because that peace is the truth. It's the truth that will lead you towards your Satori, When we are walking these paths, these journeys into the self, when we are doing this work on ourselves, which is what Usui Reiki Ryoho is, at some point, we have to do that journey alone. Now, this is another point that I really wanted to bring up in this video, and you've heard me say this many times on my channel. We don't always have to do the work alone. There is some times, maybe, where we can find value in the belief, There's some times where we can find value in the spectacle of the practice. However, that should never be the focus. So, in my opinion, the journey should always be in the direction of that stillness. It should always be in the direction of cultivating that stillness. And there's two questions that you can ask yourself, be it with your training or be it with your own self-practice or going to see other people or whatever it might be, anything that you look at in your practice of Reiki. Is this going towards stillness? So is the teaching framed in stillness? Is that the trajectory that they're doing? And is this a function of my mind? If those two things are kept at your forefront of your journey through the practice, then that ensures that you are always recognizing when your mind becomes attached or busy again, and you are trying your best to keep your trajectory towards stillness. If we do that, then an entire understanding of Usui Reiki Ryoho comes to the forefront, and that understanding leads you to your liberation. It leads you to your salvation, because nobody can get you there except you. Nobody can help you find your own Satori except you. You have to do it. And when you're there, you're alone. You're all by yourself, right? And there's so many, there's so many teachers that will sell you a spectacle, that will teach you in a weekend, that will do all these types of things that are breaking those two questions. Is it in the direction of stillness? And is this thing a function of a busy mind? So if we can look at those two things, then that means that we start to weed out anything that creates more suffering. And we start to move in the direction of seeking out teachers and practices to help us understand Usui Reiki Ryoho from a path or a trajectory that will lead to your Satori, lead to your stillness, lead to your truth. It will lead to that movie or that video that's moving through you that is the amalgamation of everything that you believe in life, everything that you remember, everything that you see, and so on. It will increasingly soften that video or that understanding as you progress in your training. So one journey leads to an increasing softness and lightness in your life, Onsen Ritsume. And one journey leads to an increased amount of mental attachment and spectacle and suffering. One of those is a dead end, and one of those leads to your salvation. So I hope that helps everybody. I hope you enjoy that video. I hope it gives some food for thought on your own journey, on your own practice of Reiki, and just maybe alter that trajectory towards your own liberation. Be well, everybody, and in Gassho to all.